Welcome to the Chaos Chronicles, where parenting, humor, and the hard truths of foster care, adoption, and big behaviors collide. Hi, I'm Stacy Hickey. I'm mom of 6. I've been a foster parent to 17 children, and I'm the adoptive mom of my 2 youngest daughters. With years of experience as a child abuse detective turned school counselor, I'm here to offer real talk, expert advice, and plenty of laughs. If you're navigating the chaos of parenting, whether you're a foster or adoptive parent, a special needs parent, or just trying to make sense of the wild ride of family life, this podcast is for you. Each episode delivers practical tips, heartwarming stories, and a dose of comedy to help you embrace the beautiful chaos of your journey. Let's normalize the struggles of parenting children with big behaviors, ADHD, autism, and trauma, and create a space where you never have to walk this path alone. Laugh, learn, and lean into the chaos together. Subscribe now to stay updated on all new episodes. I want to spend some time today talking about our school-age children, special education, 504 plans, and individual education plans, or IEPs. My knowledge about special education, 504s, and IEPs comes from working in special education as a case manager, writing and implementing IEPs. I also worked as a 504 coordinator where I attended national training to ensure that I understood the process and how to implement these plans. Aside from the official stuff, the vast majority of my experience comes from being a mom and an advocate for my children. Raising kids with different needs is hard enough on its own, but once they hit school age, it's like that monster you thought was under the bed, but it's real and it's got homework. Most of us walk into the education system completely unaware of what services are available to us and how we gain access to different supports and resources. Sometimes we don't even know what a 504 plan or an IEP is, or what the difference is between them. How do we qualify for one? Are we going to have to fight to get our child's needs met? Good lordy, the anxiety is so real as our children become school age. Today, we're going to talk about special education and what exactly that means. We'll talk about the differences between 504 plans and IEPs and how to know if your child qualifies. We will talk about the dreadful us versus them mentality and the importance of working together as a team with your child's school. Lastly, we will cover different strategies and accommodations that you and your child might find helpful in supporting your kiddo in school. My hope is that you might find at least one nugget of information that's helpful to you. I feel like I can't talk about our children entering the education system without first talking about special needs support groups. I am sure you're like, huh? What do support groups have to do with education? But let me share with you where my head is at. I am in a lot of support groups, a lot. These groups are amazing at allowing you to feel a sense of belonging. They are great at providing support during hard times and giving insight when you have questions. I find most support groups to be very, very beneficial. But one trend I have noticed over the years is the ease with which many of these support groups bash school districts and create a mentality of us versus them when it comes to parents versus the educational system. I realize that not all school districts are created equal, but going into a meeting with the school staff to talk about your child's needs with your hands up, ready to fight, truly serves no one, especially your child. I can genuinely speak from both sides of the situation. We had 2 vastly different experiences trying to get additional support in place for our daughters. Same school district, but 2 different schools and 2 different staff members. Both experiences ultimately have turned out to be nothing short of awesome, but one of them started out extremely messy and left all of us a bit bumped and bruised. So I definitely understand the urge to go in guns a-blazing. But it is so much more valuable to come in calm, cool, collected, knowing your ish, and allowing your child to see the importance of working well with others, even when we don't always agree. Now is the moment where I say, do as I say, not as I do, because hindsight is always 20/20, right? When Sammy was in 1st grade, we felt she needed additional support in school. We had no experience with special education at this time. The only support groups I had sought out up to that point were foster care and adoption groups. At this point, I was legit a special education rookie. I just knew that my daughter had been through more than any child her age should have to experience, and she was struggling in all areas of her life. She didn't feel safe at school, she didn't trust adults, and she needed more than the traditional 1st grade student. We requested a special education testing and scheduled a meeting with her teacher and the school psychologist to review those results. At the meeting, we were told that Sammy didn't qualify for special education, and they didn't see the need for additional support. At that time, I then requested a 504 plan so Sammy could at least have accommodations to help support her. And again, I was denied. Now, mind you, This is the child that we had to drag to school every day while she would cry hysterically. The same child that experienced severe trauma, wouldn't engage in class, struggled socially. That child. In my mind, their response was complete crap, and they were confirming every stereotype I had heard about the school system. Now, this isn't my proudest moment, but a mom's got to do what a mom's got to do. So let me paint the picture for you. We are sitting in a first grade classroom, myself, my husband, the teacher, and the psychologist. We're sitting in a tiny little first grader chairs with our knees practically hitting our chins. Our oldest son had left for Army boot camp the day before, so I was already a complete emotional wreck. The teacher shared how she had zero concerns about my daughter, which I knew wasn't true because I was the one that was getting the calls and the emails every single day from her. This actually still baffles me today, but nonetheless. After the teacher shared that she had no concerns, the school psychologist then shut us down for both an IEP and a 504. It was at this point that I lost my ever-loving mind. Honestly, most of the conversation is a blur, but what I do remember is this. I raised my voice and I went off like a crazy person, while simultaneously ugly crying to the point that I was hyperventilating. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. In my mind, everyone had already failed this poor child, and now her school was failing her too. I was very clear and left no room for error when I expressed how that made me feel and how they were just as bad as the child welfare system, and clearly they didn't care about my daughter. Blah, blah, blah. I went on, and I legit lost it. I don't know why, but for some reason, I really hate that phrase, mama bear. But I tell ya, I went full mama bear mode on those two people to the point that they couldn't get a word in edgewise, even if they tried, and they could not get out of that classroom fast enough. Needless to say, I received an email from the principal later that night, and Sammy suddenly qualified for a 504 plan. I share this story for two reasons. I have a very real understanding of how things can go absolutely beautifully, but I've also been on the ugly side of advocating for our children. We did ultimately pull Sammy from that school, and once we moved her to a different school and her accommodations were in place, the support she received was a game changer. As Sammy got into 5th grade, her 504 turned into an IEP. That process was pushed for and led by her school, and our experience with the special education team at all levels has been amazing. Now, Millie was 3 years old when she was referred to developmental preschool. Her enrollment included being evaluated for an IEP. This all happened before Sammy's 504 changed over to an IEP, so we were in somewhat unfamiliar territory. I found myself searching special needs groups to gain a better understanding of what to expect, what I needed to do as a mom, and what types of supports might be available to Millie. After all, my experience with Sam started off a bit rough. By the end of my searching and prior to our meeting, I just knew, based off of our prior experience and what the support groups were telling me, it was going to be a fight. It was going to be us versus the quote-unquote system. The school was going to fight anything I said and find any way possible to deny my daughter her much-needed support. Boy, I could not have been more wrong. I literally walked into the school, all sorts of puffed up. My defenses were up and I was ready to get it on. I was met with the kindest, most genuine people on the other side of the table. They were eager to learn about Millie. They wanted to know her story. They were interested in both the areas where she struggled and the areas where she thrived. They valued us as part of the team. There was never a moment they pushed back on qualifying Millie for special education. The experience was seamless, and she was actually able to receive more services than we knew were even possible. As Millie transitioned from preschool to elementary, her special education team has been phenomenal. These folks love Millie through the good and the bad. She has truly required them to think outside the box, and they have embraced the challenge. I share the girls' story because they both started off very different, but have turned into great success stories. I can't stress enough the importance of being a team for your child. This doesn't mean you don't speak up and advocate for your child. There may very well be a time to lose your ish, but I can promise you it isn't right out the gate. What is helpful and powerful is arming yourself with knowledge of the system and the supports that may be available to your child prior to that meeting. Your team is full of professional, knowledgeable adults, so being open-minded to their thoughts and ideas is crucial. As parents, we know our child better than anyone else, but these folks are super knowledgeable about the school system and different strategies and interventions that have worked in the past. So keep an open mind. From an educator perspective, I have never met an educator that doesn't want to see a child succeed in school. It doesn't always feel like it, but educators have your child's best interest at heart. Special education teachers are a very special population of people who care deeply about their students. When you are open to working together as a team, it can be magical, not only for you, but for your child. Okay, now enough about that. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of special education and what you need to know. A 504 plan and an IEP are two different things. Your child can technically qualify for both a 504 and an IEP, but from my experience, a child qualifies for one or the other. Everything included in a 504 can be included in an IEP, but not everything in an IEP can be included in a 504. Both 504 plans and IEPs are legal documents that must be followed by the school. A 504 plan is protected under the Rehabilitation Act, and an IEP is protected under IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. A 504 is created by the school to provide accommodations and support to a child with any disability. 504 plans can actually be temporary in the case of a physical accommodation for an injury. A student qualifying for a 504 does not necessarily qualify for special education. The accommodations for a 504 ensure equal access to education within the general education classroom. A child with a 504 plan is still required to meet all of the same academic requirements as a student without a 504 plan. It's easier to get a 504 plan with a medical diagnosis and paperwork, but it is not required. To request a 504 plan, you want to reach out in writing to your child's school counselor or 504 coordinator. Once you make the request, they are obligated to hold a meeting to discuss your child's disability and determine if your child qualifies for a 504 or not. Just a reminder, you are a very important part of this team. Examples of some 504 accommodations might include extended time on assignments, testing in a separate location, movement breaks, etc. Now, an IEP is short for Individualized Education Plan. An IEP is developed and implemented once your child has been evaluated and deemed eligible for special education. Once again, if you're requesting your child to be evaluated, you should send an email or written request to your child's counselor or school psychologist or administration to request an evaluation. This puts the school on a 30-day clock to start the evaluation process. An IEP is an in-depth document specific to your child. It identifies your child's disability, both deficits and areas of strength for your child, test scores, a whole slew of information. The team, which you are a crucial part of, determines goals for your child depending on their area of need, as well as appropriate accommodations for your child. Qualifying for an IEP means that your child requires specially designed instruction in some way or another to access the curriculum. Accommodations on an IEP can be the same as a 504 plan, but can also include accommodations that may slightly alter the curriculum to meet a child's needs. Some examples of IEP accommodations might include doing the odds or evens on an assignment, or allowing a student to write a 3-paragraph essay instead of a 5. There are 13 different categories to qualify for an IEP. A few of the common categories are specific learning disability. This would be a significant deficit in reading, writing, or math. Other health impairments, or OHI. This would be the category where disabilities like ADHD, anxiety, etc. fall under. Emotional disability for children whose behaviors impact their ability to access curriculum or maintain in the general education classroom, like oppositional defiant disorder. Some schools will tell you that disruptive mood dysregulation disorder doesn't qualify for an IEP. That is wrong. DMDD is a newer diagnosis that many people are not well versed in. If your child's behaviors significantly impact their access to the curriculum, they may qualify for an IEP under emotional disability. Your child can also qualify for an IEP under autism. Your child's qualifying category can also change over the years. Millie initially qualified for an IEP under other health impairments, then it was changed to emotional disability, and now she qualifies under autism. When we talk about your child's team, it can be confusing to know who's part of the team. First, you are a crucial part of the team. The team also consists of the school psychologist, teachers, case managers, and anyone else who works with your child. This can include your child's developmental pediatrician, therapist, behavioral health agency, speech pathologist, occupational therapist, essentially anyone that you feel would be beneficial to be there. Our kids are quite often seen by multiple professionals, and it can be really helpful to have everyone on the same page for consistency's sake. As parents, we can be weird and protective when it comes to sharing information about our kids. We want to protect them at all costs. I would urge you to consider sharing information across the board with people caring for your child. Everyone brings different experiences, thoughts, perspectives, and ideas to the table, and this can greatly benefit your child. Okay, so your child has been evaluated and qualifies for special education. Now is the time to get to know your team. It's important for everyone to be on the same page, because when it works well, it can be such a beautiful thing. I have said this before, but we would not have made it this far in public school without Millie's team of complete special education superstars. I feel these people have become like family to us. We have such a mutual respect for one another and what each of us brings to the table. Millie's team knows that when she's having a rough morning before school or if there's something going on, I'm going to reach out to them and give them a heads up. They also know when Millie has a rough day at school that they can call me, and I trust 100% in what they're telling me and how they have handled the situation. I know they love my girl and always have her best interest at heart. Now, I hope you don't mind for a minute while I have a squirrel moment and I tell you a funny little story from Millie about last week. I can't remember what day it was, but I got an email from Millie's case manager saying, "There isn't an emergency, but when would you be available to chat?" Now, her case manager always waits until the end of the day to call me and update me when Millie has a rough day. So this was unusual. I immediately responded that I had a break during third period and could talk then. As soon as the bell rang to end the class, so did my phone. Oh, Lord, what has Millie done? Is immediately went through my head. Her case manager began to tell me that they found a note in Millie's desk. I'm thinking, awesome. Millie hates writing and is writing notes. That's a win. She then tells me that she doesn't know how long the note has been there or who the note was written to. Okay, this doesn't sound like we're celebrating Millie's writing skills. She then proceeds to tell me that from what they can decipher, because Millie struggles to spell and write clearly, the note says, "Do you want to do sex? Yes or no?" Whoa, not exactly what I was expecting. Millie has never talked about sex or been sexual in any way, and I don't think she even knows what the word sex means. Her case manager agreed that this was really odd for Millie and out of character. She then asked me how I wanted to proceed. Do I want them to ask her about the note? Do I want to ask her at home? What do I want to do? My head is still trying to process what the note said, and I hadn't seen a picture of the note yet to decipher it for myself. I told her case manager I was perfectly fine with them asking Millie what the note said, and then we could go from there. And obviously, I would be talking to her about it at home as well. Later that day, our case manager called me back and told me that Millie pretty much shut down and didn't want to talk about the note. Now, that didn't surprise me. The detective in me immediately kicked in, and I thought, okay, I'm up. Time to dust off my interrogation skills and get to the bottom of this. We get home from school, and I get the picture of the note. Here we go. The note makes absolutely no sense. I can typically break down Millie's pretty well, but I got absolutely nothing with this note. One of the words in the note definitely looked like the word sex, so I see where their concerns were coming from. I called Millie over and I showed her the note and simply said, "Hey, what does this note say?" She couldn't even read her own writing. She threw out a few guesses that didn't make a ton of sense. I pointed to the word sex and I asked her what that word was. She looked at the word and confidently said, "That word is say. I just messed up the Y." She had spelled say phonetically, S-E-Y. Now that she said it, I could see it. The X in sex wasn't a full X, and it definitely could have been a messy Y while she was writing the word say. Who knows? Millie wasn't acting defensive, which is definitely her tell. She didn't act like she was being sneaky or trying to hide anything. Millie writing about sex would be so out of character for her. My interrogation skills told me that she was telling the truth. I reached back out to her case manager and shared with her what Millie told me. We both had a good laugh and appreciated one another trying to get to the bottom of it. Why do I share this story with you? This could have been an extremely uncomfortable situation for Millie's case manager to bring to a parent. As a parent, if I didn't have the relationship I do with Millie's team, I can see myself being defensive and angry that they would even think that my daughter would be soliciting sex in third grade. But it's because Millie's team has consistently built that solid relationship with both me and Millie and shown over and over again how much they care for her that we were able to laugh and joke through this really uncomfortable situation. Millie's case manager expressed how grateful she was that our relationship allows us to have really hard conversations with ease. and she knows that I fully trust her and her judgment, and I'm so grateful for her role in our lives. Moral of the story: developing those relationships makes a world of difference in your school experience. Alrighty, so let's talk about some accommodations that may help your child while they're at school. The staff working with your child should become experts in offering choices to your child. Would you like to complete your work in the classroom, or would you like to go to a life skills classroom to complete your work? Two choices the adult creates, but allows the child to feel that they have some control and power in selecting their choices. The use of timers, frequent reminders, and check-ins are so important. I have a lot of students with ADHD in my classes. I am constantly giving them countdowns to ensure that they are on task and getting their work done. I am forever saying, you have 25 minutes to submit your assignment. You have 15 minutes to submit your assignment. You have 7 minutes to submit your assignment. You get it. Remember, many kids with ADHD have time blindness. They really need those reminders, visuals, and check-ins. Testing in a separate location and extended time on tests is a very common accommodation. This is helpful for the student with test anxiety or someone who feels pressure to hurry up and finish the test because everyone else is done. Another accommodation that can be helpful, but is also a bit tricky, is extended time on assignments. As your child gets older, it becomes imperative to include them in learning to advocate for themselves and not using their accommodations as a crutch. Once kids are high school age, I write into the accommodation that they can request extra time on assignments if they request it from the teacher before the due date. One thing I would like to note: extended time should be used when your child is actively working on an assignment and needs more time to complete it, not when they blow off an assignment and choose to do it days later. It can be really easy for our kids to use this accommodation to procrastinate, and we all know that they don't need any more help with procrastination. Many of our kids struggle with public speaking. It is written into Sammy's accommodations that she will present to the teacher and not in front of the class. She also won't be called on to give an answer unless she knows ahead of time or volunteers herself. Now, this is an area where we really hope to grow her confidence and slowly adjust that accommodation, but for where she is right now, it's definitely needed. Teachers should be giving clear expectations and single-step directions. When kids are under stress, they don't have the ability to process multi-step directions. For our kids that can't stop moving, the use of chair bands, wobble seats, standing desks, some type of alternative seating. And then there are fidgets. If used appropriately and not as a toy, fidgets can be amazing. The best fidget I have found for kids of all ages is putty. It occupies their mind, keeps them engaged, is quiet and not messy. It is the go-to for all of my high school students. Did you know you have the right to say no to homework, especially if your child is younger? This can be a very reasonable and oftentimes the right thing to do for your child. I feel this can be somewhat controversial, but for me, it's pretty clear-cut. Millie works extremely hard to keep it together all day at school. When she gets home, the last thing she needs is more schoolwork. In my opinion, home should be her safe place. When we are home, we are always learning. We are playing, exploring, and laughing together as a family. When Millie is out playing with her friends, she is learning far more than she ever would by completing a worksheet. We specifically try to practice reading and writing at home with her, but we never push it. We just do what we can do when we can do it, and it has taken a huge burden off of both of us. When you are advocating for this accommodation, you don't have to be a jerk about it. You can just tell the team, listen, I appreciate that you're passionate about your students learning. We love learning too. It's just going to look a bit different at our home. If your child struggles with math or really any other specific subject and completing full assignments is really hard for them, what about completing just the odds or the evens? This still allows your child to show mastery, but the likelihood of them actually completing the work will be much greater. This truly could work for any subject. Visuals, visuals, visuals. The use of visuals can be so helpful. Visuals in the form of posting on the wall what is expected of them, guided notes where instead of writing notes by hand, the student needs to fill in key words, or having the teacher share PowerPoints with your child after a lesson so they can visually see a second time what was talked about in class. If your child has anxiety, gets overwhelmed, or dysregulated easily, movement breaks or the ability to step out of class for 5 minutes to take a walk can help. I used to give students cards that were red on one side and green on the other. They served two purposes. If a student needed to step out of class, They didn't need to raise their hand, get my attention, and ask to leave. Most kids would rather suffer in silence than do that, especially if they're having a moment. The students flip their cards to red, set it on their desk or table, and walk out. This tells me that they need a minute and doesn't draw attention to them. It also allows me to know that I need to check in on them at a later time. This card also works when a teacher is lecturing and a student might have a question but is too anxious to ask in front of the class. If the student has a green side of the card up, everything is good. If they flip the card to red, this signals to the teacher that they have a question. Once the teacher is done, they can go over to the student and get their question answered. When your child qualifies for a 504 plan or an IEP, there are so many different accommodations available to meet your child's individualized needs. I am just touching on a few common accommodations that we use or that I see regularly in the classroom. This is by no means an exhaustive list. We talked about a lot today: the differences between 504 plans and IEPs, the importance of being a team player, accommodations you might want to consider, and most importantly, why you should not completely lose your marbles on folks. Entering the world of special education can be incredibly intimidating. Being an active, supporting member of the team is one of the best things you can do for yourself and your child. If you ever have any questions about 504s or IEPs, you can always reach out to me through Instagram at Life with the Hickeys or on Facebook at Stacy Hickey. I am more than happy to jump into your trench with you. Hell, I'm already down there. I also volunteer for an agency in Arizona called Raising Special Kids. Navigating the school system is one of Raising Special Kids' specialties. I urge you to go and explore their website. You can find them at www.raisingspecialkids.org. They actually have presentations on 504s and IEPs and a ton of other topics that you might find helpful, so you should really check it out. As always, it has been a blast to hang out with you. I hope this information was helpful. If you know a family that might benefit from joining our little village, please invite them in. So much love to you and yours. I hope you have a fabulous day. Until next time, take care.